Hello and welcome to another bad comic review. This time I'm looking at Legenderry Red Sonja. That there, Legenderry. I don't know why it's called Legenderry. Now this is issue 2 of Legenderry Red Sonja. I believe this is a miniseries. I'm not positive on that, but I'm too lazy to look it up, so. But we have the Pirate Queen Red Sonja and her friends, her new lady friend Tesla. God, that's such a stupid name. Giving them directions to an island that is hidden where her boyfriend is being held hostage. And it is the hideout of Gath. And of course it's hidden magically, which Sonja says, you've been drinking. So she pulls out a Wajat and holds it over the map, and it reveals a secret hidden island, of course, which looks vaguely like the Wu-Tang symbol. So if you're a Wu-Tang clan, I think this is their island. And then we jump over to the island where Gath is torturing his son. Don't care. And then we're back over on the ship, and they find the island. They get there within half a day, and they find this large castle that they have to sneak into. They do so. They find the guy. They kill a guard and then take off, and they're being chased. Of course, this is part of Gath's plan. We find out that Gath is in fact leaking information to Boss Thorn, who thinks he's got a man on the inside, but of course he doesn't. It's all part of Gath's plan of something or other. And it turns out that what's actually happening is that this boyfriend, Dinar, or whatever his name is, he found some secret metal on an island somewhere that Gath wants to use to forge a new weapon. So they're headed to the island, and they're effectively leading Gath straight there because he is spying on them through a skyring Wajat that lets him sneak a peek at what they're doing. Probably through the Wajat that this chick's wearing now. Alright, overall, not a bad story. A little mediocre. My main complaint is not the story itself. The concept is good. There are two main complaints, I would say. The first is the pacing is terrible. It feels like they're stretching out stuff into multiple panels that could be handled in one panel. Do a larger panel where two people are talking and have one word balloon above another one. And then you can have more action. That seems like common sense to me. Instead, it's dragged out over several pages for something that could have been wrapped up in 1 to 2 pages. And that's a problem with a lot of modern comics, is they're writing like they're writing young adult novels and not like they're writing visual medium. A visual medium needs something dynamic to be happening every so often. A lot of comic writers, and I think this one in particular, there is some talent here, but he really needs to look at like old cliffhanger serials and learn how pacing's done. Because those guys knew what they were doing when they had a cliffhanger every 15 minutes. Something you had to wrap the story up in 15 minutes and then lead into the next story. This lacks that level of dynamic. There has to be an action scene every so often. It has to be dynamic, you have to get words out, and you have to keep the story moving. And I think that if you follow the formula of the serials, it really translates well to comics. So that being said, my most egregious complaint with this issue is the way people talk. It is incredibly unnatural, and not just because it takes place in a different time period. It's because it can't decide whether it wants to have more medieval type dialogue or more modern dialogue. You can't have both. And it seems to jump back and forth depending on who's talking. And I find that very difficult to reconcile because it's incredibly irritating. Still, like I said, the core story isn't bad. Although Red Sonja does look a little chilly occasionally. I think this story was a bit rushed, but it was a decent story, decent issue. I didn't have a problem with that. Overall, I would recommend this book, but I hope they fix the dialogue issue. This is not Shakespeare, obviously, but the dialogue needs a little tightening up. Set it in a more medieval time, like we usually see with a sword and sorcery book, or in a more modern time, in this case, the 18 or 19, or late 1800s, early 1900s, somewhere in there. Or even just modern vernacular would be fine, but it needs to pick one. Like I said, overall pretty good, pretty decent book. I like the art. It's growing on me quite a bit, actually. That's by Igor Lima. I do like his art style. It's definitely a lot better in this issue than I gave it credit for last issue, I think. So did enjoy that. Thought it was pretty good. As far as I'm concerned, it's a fairly mediocre book. It's worth recommending just because it was pretty fun, and if you like steampunk, you'll like it. But is it worth $4? Maybe. I think it really depends on your love of steampunk and the Nautilus and that sort of technology type thing, and the concept of a pirate version of a fantasy character. So if you're real into that, it's fine. There's an attractive lady running around in a metal bra the entire issue, so yeah, good times to be had on that front. But I didn't feel ripped off, but I probably won't buy a trade paperback of it. I probably won't even read this again once I'm done with the storyline as it is now. If you're not a Red Sonja fan or a steampunk fan, it's probably not going to be any good for you. That'll do it for this episode. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, and we hope to see you on the next one.